What if everything you thought you knew about this situation was only part of the story? Not because anyone lied, but because you were never given the full picture to begin with. Right now, what's happening with Melody Shari isn't just another moment of online drama that will fade in a few days. It's something deeper, something that reveals how control works behind the scenes, how narratives are shaped, and what really happens when someone decides they're done letting others speak for them. And once you really look at the details, the timing, the reactions, the actions taken, you start to realize this might not be as simple as it first seemed. Let's break this down carefully, because every part of this situation connects to something bigger. For years, Melody's story has existed in a shared space where multiple voices, edits, and production decisions influenced what the audience saw. That's the nature of reality television. It's storytelling, but it's never the entire story. There are always moments that don't make it on screen, conversations that are cut, and perspectives that get reshaped to fit a narrative. But now, Melody has stepped into a different space entirely, one where she doesn't just participate in the story, she controls it. And that shift alone changes the entire dynamic. When Melody launched her Patreon, it wasn't just about creating another platform or adding another stream of content. It was about ownership. It was about having a place where her voice could exist without filters, without edits, and without interruption. That kind of control is rare, especially for someone who has spent years in an environment where stories are often collaborative and sometimes contested. On Patreon, she decides what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. There's no middle layer adjusting her tone or trimming her words. And when someone finally reaches that level of independence, it naturally shifts the balance of power, not just for them, but for everyone connected to their story. Now, here's where things start to get complicated. Her Patreon gets reported and placed under review. At first glance, that might seem like a routine issue. Platforms review content all the time. But when you look closer, the situation becomes harder to ignore. Platforms don't just randomly flag accounts without reason. Someone has to take that step. Someone has to actively report it. And when you pair that with the timing of everything, it raises questions that don't have simple answers. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened at a very specific moment, right when Melody began sharing more exclusive content and right after she publicly supported Drew Sidora. Timing in situations like this is never just background detail, it's often the most revealing part. Melody speaking out in support of Drew wasn't just a casual moment of solidarity, it carried meaning because it came from personal experience. She made it clear that even after a divorce, issues don't always end, and that statement alone introduced a new layer to how people view her story. It suggested that what the public has seen so far might not be the full reality, and when an audience that has followed someone for years hears something like that, it shifts their perspective. People begin to revisit past moments, reanalyze situations, and question what might have been left unsaid. That kind of shift doesn't happen quietly. When a long-standing narrative begins to change, reactions are inevitable. Some people lean in with curiosity, wanting to understand more, while others become defensive, holding on to what they previously believed. But in this case, the reaction didn't stop at opinions or debates, it turned into action. Reporting her Patreon wasn't just criticism, it was interference. And that raises a critical question that sits at the center of all of this. Who benefits from limiting her ability to speak freely? Because when you really think about it, attempts to silence or restrict someone often reveal just how powerful their voice has become. Patreon changes the game in a way that public platforms don't. It's not designed for mass access, it's built for controlled, intentional communication. The content shared there isn't easily available for everyone to dissect, repost, or reinterpret. And Melody made it clear that she intends to keep it that way by setting firm boundaries around her content. No unauthorized sharing, no screen recordings, no redistribution without consent. That level of control removes a layer of accessibility that some people may have become used to, and when that access disappears, it can create tension, especially for those who previously relied on that openness to engage, critique, or even benefit from her content. Another layer that adds complexity to this situation is the fact that Melody's story isn't entirely in the cast. She has made it clear that certain issues connected to her previous relationship are still ongoing. That alone changes the stakes. This isn't just someone reflecting on what happened years ago, it's someone actively living through a situation that continues to evolve. And when that person now has a platform where they can speak freely without mediation, it introduces uncertainty for anyone else connected to that narrative. People start to wonder what might be shared next and how it could reshape public perception.
The audience plays a bigger role in all of this than it might seem at first. Today, viewers aren't passive, they're active participants. They comment, analyze, speculate, and sometimes even influence how situations unfold. The reaction to Melody's Patreon was intense, but when you look closely, it feels disproportionate to the surface-level concerns people mentioned, like pricing or exclusivity. There are countless creators using similar models without facing the same level of backlash. So when the response feels amplified beyond the obvious reasons, it suggests that something deeper is driving it. What makes this situation even more telling is how Melody responded. She didn't panic or retreat. She addressed the issue directly, confirmed that her platform was reviewed and cleared, and continued moving forward without hesitation. That kind of response isn't accidental. It reflects preparation. It suggests that she understood the environment she was stepping into and anticipated resistance. More importantly, it shows that she's not easily shaken, which sends a strong message not just to her supporters, but to anyone watching closely. This situation also highlights a broader pattern within reality television and public storytelling. What viewers see is often just a fraction of what actually happens. There are always unseen dynamics, behind-the-scenes decisions, and untold perspectives that shape the final product. When someone steps outside of that system and begins sharing independently, it can reveal those missing pieces. And once those pieces start coming together, they can change how everything else is understood. It adds depth, context, and sometimes even contradiction to what people thought they knew. At its core, this situation is about control. Who has it, who loses it, and how people react when it shifts. Control doesn't always appear obvious. Sometimes it exists in subtle ways, like shaping narratives or influencing what information reaches the public. When that control is disrupted, reactions can become more intense. Reporting her Patreon can be seen as an attempt to reassert that control, to limit the space where she operates freely. Whether or not it succeeded isn't the main point. The intention behind it is what matters. Interestingly, efforts to limit something often have the opposite effect. Instead of reducing attention, they increase it. Melody's Patreon didn't fade into the background after being reported. It gained more visibility. More people became curious, more conversations started, and more attention was directed toward what she's building. This kind of outcome is common in public spaces. When something is challenged or restricted, it signals importance, and that alone can draw people in. Trust is another key factor that can't be overlooked. Melody has built a relationship with her audience over time, one based on consistency and authenticity. When her platform was reviewed and cleared, it reinforced that trust. It showed that there was no violation, no wrongdoing, just an attempt that didn't succeed. And when people see that, it often strengthens their support rather than weakening it. Trust creates momentum, and momentum is difficult to stop once it builds. So when you look at everything together, the launch of her platform, the timing of the report, the reactions, and her response, it becomes clear that this isn't just a single incident, it's part of a larger shift, a shift in power, in control, and how stories are told. Melody is no longer operating within a system where her voice is one of many. She's created a space where her voice stands on its own. And that kind of independence doesn't just change her path, it changes how everyone else has to respond to it. The real question now isn't whether her Patreon is worth the attention it's getting, it's what happens next. Because if this moment is any indication, this is only the beginning of something much bigger. More conversations will happen, more perspectives will emerge, and more pieces of the story may come to light. And as all of that unfolds, one thing is certain: Melody isn't stepping back. She's moving forward on her own terms, and that's exactly what makes this situation so important to watch.